Welcome to our series on using Minitab for attribute agreement analyses. In this episode, I want to talk about using time series plots to help inform your evaluation of your attribute agreement analyses. As we discussed before, when multiple people are making a measurement or evaluation, it's extremely important that everyone be able to do it the same way. So for example, in a manufacturing environment, if you were making a physical part, you might have any number of people measure that part to see what size it is. And you want to make sure that it doesn't matter who is measuring the part, they would still get the same measurement when using their instrumentation properly. If you were checking that, it would be called a gauge R&R. However, there are many times where you're not using an instrument to get a numeric measurement for a part. You may be using some other criteria to evaluate something and make an assignment. That's where you would use an attribute agreement analysis. So in the example we've been working on, we have 10 different applicants. They're applying for a credential. And you have 10 different appraisers, or as you might call them, reviewers. They review the application and they assign a level to the credential. So in our first episode, we talked about how to set up this worksheet, then how to analyze this worksheet. And now I want to show you a tool that I find especially helpful. Even though it's not strictly speaking part of an attribute agreement analysis, it's a wonderful visual representation, and that's the time series plot. But before we can look at the time series plot, we're going to have to make some adjustments to our graph. So, for example, if I tried to make my time series plot right now, it wouldn't work because you can see columns 4 and 5 have that -T. That means those are text columns, and so Minitab will not graph them. If we were just working with what's called nominal data, such as words, like if we were evaluating defects, say, and we were assigning them, is it a tear, is it a chip, is it the wrong color, then that would be nominal data, and there's no given hierarchy or order to that. And so we couldn't do the time series plot. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. However, we are using ordinal data, and that means that the answers have a specific order or hierarchy, level 0 to level 6. We have the L's in there, so Minitab assigned it text and ran the attribute agreement analysis, no problem. But for our time series plot, what I want to do is convert that into numbers. So here's how I would do that. First, I'm going to go down to the bottom. I hope you can see that, and hit the plus. That's going to make an additional worksheet. I'm then going to take my data and simply copy paste it into my additional worksheet. Personally, I never recommend doing something to your original data. Always save your original, and if you want to make changes or guess around, make it another worksheet. I'll call this one time series plot. I just double clicked at the bottom to be able to type in there. And then I'm going to make some alterations. The first thing I'm going to do is I need to take out the letter L. In order for this to become, instead of text, I want it to become numbers. I'm going to make my screen a little bit bigger. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing better. All right, and just grab the top here and drag it up so you can see more of what's happening. Minitab defaults to this 3-panel setup, but at any given time you probably want to focus on one panel more than another. So I'm just going to hit Control F, and it does And you can see I've already kind of put in here what I want to do. It's similar to how you would do anything. Hit Control F for a find and also a replace. So I want to find all the L's and I want to replace it with nothing, effectively deleting it all. So you can see I could do, whoops, let's just replace all. And it took all of the L's out of that column. So now I want to do the same with column 5. I want to take all the L's out of there. So I hit Control F again. I want to find the L's and replace them with nothing. So I'll hit replace all, and that now turned it into numbers. However, you'll notice there's still the dash T at the top. I want to get rid of the dash T. That means it's text. And what I want it to be is number. So I right-clicked on the column, and I'm going to scroll down to column properties. No, format column, excuse me. I click on format column, and I want to go from text, I get this pop up, to just automatic numeric. I hit OK. Okay, I was on column 5. And that took the T off and changed the positioning of the number. So now I know that that's actually a number. And I would not be able to do what I'm about to do unless Minitab is reading this as numbers. Okay, so we have these back to numbers now. Now what I want to do is I want to go into Graph and go down to Time Series Plot. One of the really nice things about Minitab is that it can make a lot of graphs all at once. Sometimes it takes some practice to set it up correctly, but once you get it, it's a huge time saver. So I'm going to go, what kind of time series plot do I want? I want multiple with groups. Okay, I'm going to graph a lot of stuff here. And it doesn't matter what column's highlighted because I'm going to go through and tell it what I want. So what I want is the assessment. That's what I want to graph, what people assigned the level to be. And I want it grouped by the samples. So what that's saying is I want to see all the assessments for sample 1. I want to see all the assessments for sample 10. And I want to see it all in a similar graph. All right, so I have a couple more things to do. I'm going to go to time, scale. And actually, let me go back so you can see how that was. Initially, there's nothing here. So you can see I did this beforehand. And another nice thing about Minitab is when you do something and you go to do it again, it defaults to the last thing you did. Okay, so as I was doing this before the recording, it left it in there. So I just double click assessments and then I click here. And if you don't want to double click, you can just single click and hit select. Okay, so then I want to look at the time scale. And again, this had nothing in it. And it defaults to index. All right, I don't want an index though. The nice thing about an attribute agreement analysis is you can see in column C1, you have a run order. And I've stressed this in other videos. It's very helpful when folks actually follow that run order. It helps answer questions in the future, and a lot of things can come up that might be affected by time. So if you don't have the capacity or it's not part of the experiment to say, watch everyone do it and coach them in the correct order, I recommend you emphasize to your appraisers that they do need to go in the run order. That ensures that it's randomized, and it also ensures that we can track things that might be time related. A simple example would be rising temperatures. If you're seeing a problem and you would see the trend go up and up and up and up, perhaps because temperatures are rising, and you can track what you're measuring over time. There's other, that's a simple example, but there's other ones that might be applicable to attribute agreement analyses as well. And it's come in very handy several times to be able to check the run order of things. So I'm going to stamp it with something from my work. So I go down and I click stamp. And what I want to stamp it with is what we've been saying here, run order. Okay. Now I need to tell Minitab, what do I want my multiple graphs to look like? I want to split it by variables with groups. You can either have groups on one graph in separate panels. I do not like that. I like my groups of separate graphs and to handle each graph separately. So this was blank. And what I want is each separate graph, a separate graph for each sample. That would be, remember, those are our applications. So each application is going to get its own graph of what everyone ranked a given application. And that can tell you a lot of things. So now I hit OK, and let's see what happens if I set it up correctly. All right, so you can see it made a third row here, time series plot of assessments. Now I'm going to scooch this down. And we will look at our time series plot. So this was application number 1, sample 1. And you can see a lot of people were the same, some people were close, and a few people were really different. All right. Now let's look at who they are. And again, this makes it really helpful if you've given your appraisers or your reviewers their actual name. There's a couple of really simple things we're going to do in Minitab that will make your life easier and aren't necessarily in something like an Excel. All right, so I'm just going to right click here and I'm going to, what I want it to do, I'm going to edit the graph. And here comes up the graph I'm editing. Let's make it a little larger so you can see more closely what's going on. All right, and you can either right click again on the graph and go to add item, or you can go up here to the drop down and click add item, and you'll get the same drop down as right clicking. Right, what I want to add first are data labels, and this is very nice, very handy. Do you want to use Y value labels? No, I don't. I can see that easily. What I can't see, what I would really like, are the associated column labels. What I want to see is which reviewer gave that assignment. So then I hit OK. And I get a series of names up here. Now, it's not very beautiful because they kind of overlap each other more than a number would, but it is very easy because you can just drag some. Each name is its own little graphic. And so if some of them overlap, you can just scoot them around, you know, still easily differentiating what they belong to. And you can begin to make, Lady Molly's name is so long, it just keeps running into everyone. Okay, so now I have them all spread out and I can easily see who did what. All right, so Poirot here and here, Marple here and here, they're all the same. What I would very often do is go back then, and I want to do one more thing. And that's add what they should be. And again, that's another really easy thing to do in Minitab. This time I'm going to right click on my graph and I'm going to add a reference line. This is very nice as well. I really like it. Whatever the value should be, the value of my standard. In this case, the standard was 0, level 0. I just say, put me a line at the Y value 0. So I type that into the top here and I hit OK. And now you have a beautiful dotted line at reference 0. Let's say let's say it was actually 6, it would put the line up here and I would say, oh wow, only 3 people got it right and everyone was way off. How did that happen? But in this case, most of our imaginary detectives got this right, and only Sam Spade was way off both times. You see, everyone's name is on here twice. If you remember that each one had a replicate. So each one did it twice. And now you can very easily see who was spot on, who was close, and who was way off. And so I make these graphs for every single sample. And then it's very easy to copy and paste an individual graph into a presentation like that. And in our next video, I'm going to put together a presentation that's going to highlight some of the most useful data that you can get from an attribute agreement analysis. Even though this is all made up data and made up detectives, we're going to treat it like a real test and see what we might learn or do with the data. If you have any questions or other aspects, things I didn't cover or things you'd like to hear more about, please feel free to put those in the comments and we will definitely address them. Thank you.